In the annals of British history, no dynasty has seen more upheaval than the House of Stuart. This tumultuous tale begins with the ascension of James VI of Scotland to the English throne in 1603, becoming James I of England. A moment of historical significance, this marked the first time the crowns of England and Scotland were united under a single monarch. James I, however, did not ascend the throne in an era of peace and tranquility. Quite the contrary, he assumed power in a time of profound religious and political discord. England, at this juncture, was a nation marked by deep-seated tensions between Catholics and Protestants. These tensions were not merely ideological, they had real, tangible implications for the political landscape of the nation. The ascension of James I, a Protestant, to the throne did not sit well with the Catholic fraction. This was a time when religious belief was not just a matter of personal conviction, it was a question of loyalty and allegiance. To be a Catholic was to be seen as a potential traitor, a potential threat to the Protestant monarchy. But it wasn't just religious tensions that marked this era. The political landscape was equally fraught. The throne was not an absolute power, it was constrained by Parliament, and the relationship between the two was often marked by conflict and tension. James I, like his successors, would find himself navigating this complex and often perilous political landscape, trying to balance the demands of the throne with those of Parliament. So it was against this backdrop of religious and political strife that the Stuart dynasty began its reign. The Stuarts, a dynasty that would see more upheaval than any other in British history, did not come to power in a time of peace, but in an era marked by discord and tension. Thus, the reign of the Stuarts began under a cloud of religious and political strife. This was the dawn of the Stuart dynasty, a dynasty that would leave an indelible mark on the annals of British history. James I, the first Stuart king, had a reign marked by intrigue and conspiracy. This monarch, ascending to the throne of England in 1603, found his reign embroiled in a plot most sinister, the famed Gunpowder plot of 1605. This was not just a minor squabble among courtiers, but a full-blown conspiracy to assassinate the king and supplant the Protestant monarchy with a Catholic head of state. A group of provincial English Catholics, disenfranchised and embittered by the increasing repression of their religion, hatched this deadly scheme. The plot, led by Robert Catesby and including men such as Guy Fawkes, aimed to blow up the House of Lords during the state opening of Parliament with James I in attendance. The objective was clear and chilling: to obliterate the Protestant establishment and place a Catholic monarch on the throne. But as the saying goes, the best-laid plans of mice and men often go awry. The plot was discovered thanks to an anonymous letter warning a Catholic lord to stay away from Parliament on the fateful day. The authorities moved swiftly, discovering Guy Fawkes in the cellars beneath Parliament surrounded by 36 barrels of gunpowder. The game was up. The aftermath of the plot's discovery was swift and brutal. The conspirators, those who didn't die in a desperate last stand against the king's men, were captured and executed. The plot had failed, but the shockwaves of this near miss were felt throughout the country and beyond. The Gunpowder plot became a defining moment in James I's reign and a turning point in the history of the Stuart dynasty. It led to even stricter controls over Catholics and sowed the seeds of suspicion and division that would plague the Stuarts for generations to come. James I survived the Gunpowder plot, but the event would cast a long shadow over the Stuart dynasty. This was a reign that began in intrigue and conspiracy, setting the stage for the tumultuous history of the Stuarts that was yet to unfold. The reign of Charles I, son of James I, would plunge England into civil war. This was a time of turmoil, a period when the very fabric of English society was torn asunder. Charles I, unlike his father, had a contentious relationship with Parliament. This tension between the monarchy and the government system set the stage for a catastrophic conflict. Charles I was a firm believer in the divine right of kings, an idea that held that a monarch's power was derived directly from God, and thus, they were answerable only to the divine, not to earthly institutions like the Parliament. This belief put him at odds with the growing sentiment among the populace and Parliament that sought to limit the powers of the monarchy. The conflict reached its boiling point when Charles I attempted to impose a new prayer book in Scotland, leading to the Bishops' Wars. The financial strain of these wars forced Charles to recall Parliament in 1640. However, instead of granting him the funds he needed, Parliament, led by John Pym, launched a series of reforms aimed at limiting the king's power. This was the spark that ignited the English Civil War. The war, which lasted from 1642 to 1651, was a brutal struggle between the royalists, who supported Charles I, and the parliamentarians, led by Oliver Cromwell. It was a conflict that divided families, towns, and even the church. The parliamentarians emerged victorious, leading to the capture and trial of Charles I. In a shocking turn of events, Charles I was executed in 1649, marking the first instance of regicide in British history. This was a moment that shook the very foundations of the English monarchy. The execution of a king, ordained by God according to the prevalent belief, was a stark statement of the changing power dynamics. The execution of Charles I marked a dark chapter in the history of the Stuart dynasty in Britain. It was a time of monumental change, a period that would reshape the landscape of British governance and set the stage for the eventual rise of constitutional monarchy. Following the execution of Charles I, Britain became a republic known as the Commonwealth under the leadership of Oliver Cromwell. This period, lasting from 1649 to 1660, was a stark shift from the monarchy that had defined Britain for centuries. The Commonwealth was a unique experiment in British history, where the nation was ruled by Parliament, with Cromwell as its Lord Protector. However, the Commonwealth period was fraught with challenges. The country was divided, and Cromwell's rule was marked by military dictatorship. His puritanical policies were met with resistance, and his death in 1658 threw the nation into uncertainty. This led to the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, a turning point in British history. With the restoration, Charles II, son of the executed Charles I, ascended to the throne. His reign was marked by two significant events that would forever change the face of London. The Great Fire of London in 1666 was a catastrophic event that destroyed much of the medieval city. However, it also paved the way for the rebuilding of London, transforming it into the city we know today. Shortly after the fire, another disaster struck, the bubonic plague. Known as the Great Plague of London, it claimed the lives of nearly 100,000 people, almost a quarter of the city's population. It was a devastating blow, yet Charles II managed to steer the nation through these calamities. Under his rule, Britain saw a cultural revival. The theaters, which had been closed during the Commonwealth, were reopened, leading to a flourishing of drama and literature. Charles II's reign, despite the challenges, brought about a sense of normalcy and stability that the country had been craving. Despite the calamities of his reign, Charles II managed to restore a semblance of stability to the monarchy. His reign marked the end of a tumultuous period in British history, setting the stage for the continued evolution of the monarchy and the nation as a whole. The reign of James II, brother of Charles II, would once again throw Britain into turmoil. This was a time of religious strife, political intrigue, and a battle for the soul of a nation. James II, a Catholic in a largely Protestant country, ascended to the throne in 1685, and his reign was marked by increasing religious tension. James II sought to bring about a greater degree of religious tolerance, particularly for Catholics and Protestant dissenters. However, his efforts were met with suspicion and fear. Many Protestants, especially those in power, saw James's policies as a threat to their influence and the Protestant nature of the English state. The tension reached a boiling point when James had a son in 1688. This birth threatened the establishment of a Catholic dynasty, causing 7 powerful English nobles to invite William of Orange, a Protestant and James's son-in-law, to invade England. This invitation led to what's known as the Glorious Revolution. William of Orange landed in England in November of 1688 with a sizable force. Surprisingly, he encountered little resistance. James II, abandoned by key allies and facing a lack of support from his army, chose to flee to France rather than fight. This bloodless coup was considered glorious because it accomplished a transition of power without the horrors of war. The aftermath of the Glorious Revolution saw the crowning of William of Orange and his wife Mary II, James's Protestant daughter, as joint monarchs. This marked a significant shift in power. The monarchy was no longer absolute. The English Bill of Rights, enacted in 1689, stipulated that the monarchy couldn't rule without Parliament's consent, a cornerstone of today's constitutional monarchy. The Glorious Revolution ended James II's reign, and with it, the continuous line of Stuart rule. This event was a turning point, not just in the history of the Stuart dynasty, but also in the narrative of British, or indeed world history. It forever changed the balance of power, moving England further down the path of constitutional monarchy and parliamentary democracy. The remaining Stuarts, though they held the throne, were largely figureheads. And so, we enter the final chapter of the Stuart era, the reigns of William III, Mary II, and Queen Anne. William III and Mary II ascended the throne together, marking the beginning of the joint monarchy in 1689. However, their reign was marred by political turmoil and religious strife. The couple, though Protestant, struggled to establish their authority over a predominantly Catholic kingdom. Mary II, beloved by the people, died unexpectedly in 1694, leaving William to rule alone. His reign, however, was marked by numerous wars abroad, particularly against France, which drained the kingdom's resources and left little room for domestic governance. With the death of William III in 1702, the throne passed to Mary's sister Queen Anne. Despite her 17 pregnancies, none of her children survived to adulthood. This left the kingdom in a state of unease, as the question of succession hung heavily in the air. It was during Queen Anne's reign that the Act of Settlement was passed in 1701. This pivotal legislation effectively ended the Stuart dynasty, as it excluded Catholics from the succession. The Act of Settlement was a clear statement of the kingdom's shift towards Protestantism, and it solidified the Protestant ascendancy in Britain. Queen Anne's reign also saw the unification of England and Scotland into a single entity, the Kingdom of Great Britain, in 1707. This was a significant shift in the political landscape and marked the beginning of a new era. Queen Anne died in 1714, marking the end of the Stuart dynasty. The throne passed to the House of Hanover, with George I becoming the first Hanoverian king of Great Britain. Though the Stuart dynasty ended, its impact on British history remains indelibly etched in the fabric of the nation. Their reign, fraught with religious tension, political intrigue, and war, shaped the course of British history and set the stage for the nation we know today. The Stuart era, fraught with bloodshed and upheaval, left a lasting legacy on Britain. As we traverse the annals of time, we can't help but acknowledge the profound influence that the Stuarts had on Britain. The Stuart dynasty, a lineage that ruled over Scotland and England, was characterized by a series of key events and figures that set the course of British history. At the heart of the Stuart legacy was a relentless pursuit of centralized royal power. This was a dynasty that believed in the divine right of kings, that the monarch was chosen by God, and thus his authority was absolute. This notion, although not unique to the Stuarts, was propagated with an unprecedented fervor during their rule. The reign of Charles I stands as a testament to this. His belief in his divine right led to tensions with Parliament, culminating in the English Civil War. This was a pivotal moment in the history of Britain, a war that was not fought on foreign soil, but amongst its own people. It was a war that challenged the very fabric of monarchy and led to the temporary establishment of the Commonwealth under Oliver Cromwell. Yet the Stuarts' belief in absolute monarchy was not easily quelled. The Restoration saw the return of the Stuart rule under Charles II and then James II. However, the tide had turned. The Glorious Revolution marked a shift in power from the monarchy to Parliament. The era of absolute monarchy was over, replaced by a constitutional monarchy that persists in Britain to this day. But the Stuart legacy was not solely political. It was also deeply religious. The Stuarts were devout believers, but their faith often led to conflict. James's decision to commission a new translation of the Bible resulted in the King James Version, a text that continues to be widely used today. Yet it was the religious tension under the rule of James II, a Catholic king in a predominantly Protestant nation, that led to his downfall and the Glorious Revolution. The Stuarts also left their mark on the arts and culture. The reign of Charles II, often referred to as the Restoration, was a period of great cultural revival. Theaters reopened, and literature flourished, with authors like John Milton and Samuel Pepys penning works that continue to be celebrated. In many ways, the Stuart era was a period of contradiction. It was a time of both growth and decay, of faith and conflict, of power and revolution. Yet, it is these contradictions that make the Stuart legacy so fascinating, so enduring. From the ashes of the Stuart dynasty, a new Britain emerged, forever marked by the trials and tribulations of this tumultuous era.